probably one of the most difficult decisions of a young person's life. Well, besides figuring out who your first boyfriend or girlfriend will be and what college you should go to, the most important decision is, what should you study? So often when you're trying to make up your mind, you ask people, you do some research, you look around, you look for what feels right. So what do you choose? How many are doing business? No one's doing business, so it's okay, you can raise your hand. You don't have to be brave, there we go. How about liberal arts? It's kind of a catch-all. Is anyone else going to college here? Nursing, biology, chemistry, anything? You're not going to school. Oh, I know, my dad said, so I hear you're going to college to take up space. No one's studying anything in college. It's a tough decision, isn't it? Then you switch around a little. I worked in high schools for a number of years, and oftentimes the students there would be, in their junior and senior year, what should we study? And they'd come and say, Father, what should we study in college? And they'd probably expected me to say religion or something like that, but never, I would never say anything like that. When they asked me, I would say, go and study philosophy. Make sense? Anybody studying philosophy? Oh, good. Oftentimes then parent night would come around, the parents come in and say, what are you doing telling my kid to study philosophy? What are they going to do with a degree in philosophy? I said the same thing they're going to do with a degree in business. They're going to graduate after 5 years with a lot of debt, and they're going to learn how to say, could I supersize that for 39 cents? As they flip the burgers at McDonald's. Philosophy. Why philosophy? Well, I see, we live in a world where everything is about the immediate. Everything is about today and me and fixing, and we really believe in a world where we think we can do it ourselves. I recently read that one of the curses of postmodern society, the postmodern world, is that we have lost all sense of a transcendence. That there's something bigger than us. That there's something beyond us. That we don't have all the answers. And guess what? We don't have to have all the answers. What we need to have is the ability to ask questions. Philosophy gets you to ask the questions. It broadens our horizons, takes us beyond ourselves, takes us beyond the practical things that are also practical and necessary, yes. But there's got to be something more, something greater, something that transcends. Isn't that what faith is all about? Mm-hmm. Faith is the place where we transcend the physical, the day-to-day. It's why we come to Mass on Sunday nights. A dreary, ugly night. Well, of course, we come and give thanks to God, but this is a place for us to transcend, to go beyond ourselves, to go beyond what we think is important to what really matters, that which is bigger than us, that which we as people of faith call God in our experience. It seems to me that today's readings point us directly toward that transcendence. This is an example of three people, three different times of history, who are able to reach beyond themselves. Isaiah is living in a time where things are looking bad. They're in exile. They need somebody to preach to them and tell them why they got there and how they're getting out. And Isaiah is hiding from God. He's saying, it can't be me. And all of a sudden he hears, holy, 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 the earth is full of God's glory. And the place begins to shake. And his lips are touched, and all of a sudden he's inspired to become Isaiah that we know. He preaches to the people a word that is difficult to hear and challenges them and tells them why they have been exiled from God. Not because of God, but because of their own sinfulness. But Isaiah too tries to hide. He says, oh Lord, I'm not worthy. I'm a sinner. And the earth shakes even more. And then he's touched by that transcendent God, to the point where he says, send me, I will do the proclamation and proclaim. We have a similar story in Peter and the early disciples. You know, I have this theory, I'm going to write a book about this one day, about the fishermen that Jesus calls. They are lucky that Jesus gets them out of the boat because they were starved. They were lousy fishers. Look at every time we come to them in the scriptures, Jesus has to tell them, put the boat over there, put the boat over there, throw the net over there. You think they would figure this out themselves. They're empty. Their nets are empty until Jesus comes along. It's the story of our lives. Our lives are like that. We rely just on the physical things that we have and we can do. We don't rely on the transcendent power of God's love in our world, in our own lives. Our lives, our nets are empty. But when we open ourselves up to listen, to be challenged by that word, to respond to it, there's an abundance of fish. Where the boats were nearly sinking. That's the story of faith. We hear also Paul. Talks about his life, his early life, and how he went in the wrong direction. There's some great lines in that letter to the Corinthians. But it's all about how Paul, I am unworthy. I can't do this. And all of a sudden, well, we have the story that he was knocked off his horse. Part of the legend. It's hard to find that story anyway. But he comes to realize that there's something beyond himself. We live in a world that lives with the physical. We live in a world that lives with the present reality, where everything is about today and it's always about me. And faith takes us beyond that, to the transcendent. And there's 3 commands in today's gospel that I think we could take with us. 3 commands that help us live the transcendent, beyond ourselves, to experience the holy, to live the mystery. Jesus first says, go out deeper. Don't live in the security of the world you think you've created. Don't live in just that little boat that you have today. Be willing to stretch, to go beyond. Go out deeper. Try something new. Look at a new way of fixing that relationship. Look at a new way of being holy. Look at a new way of being faithful. Go out deeper. Then he says, drop your nets. He doesn't say, by the way, I brought a good net along. Maybe you want to use mine? No, he says, drop your nets, because God recognizes we already have what it takes to be holy. We've already been blessed with the gift of our life. And within this blessing, we already have the tools. We have the skills. We have what it takes. We just need to act on it. And Jesus says, lower your nets. You've got it already. Use what God has given you to be the person God calls you to be. You don't have to look far. You don't have to run away to far places. One of the things I do in my spare time is I take pilgrimages, groups of mostly young people, high school and college students, over to Rome and Assisi on pilgrimage. And people go there and they walk into the Vatican, or they walk into the tomb of the dead popes, or they walk into Francis's tomb, or stand by the body of Clare lying there, and it's like, oh, we're having this wonderful experience. I wonder if I could have this in Milwaukee. You can have it anywhere. We have what it takes to live faith. We just need the courage to live it. And that's when we hear the 3rd command. The mantra of John Paul II. Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid to be who God has called you to be. Don't be afraid that you will fail. There is no failure in this. Most of all, don't be afraid of your success. I think that's why we don't act. Because if we do the right thing and we are successful, we're afraid they're going to ask us to do more. Do not be afraid of that success. For God will continue to push you forward and do more, take you out deeper. Great things will happen in our lives. Do not be afraid of our limitations. For in God's eyes, there are none. In all 3 stories we heard from the scriptures today, Isaiah, I am a sinful man. I can't do this. Peter falls to the knees of Jesus and says, Lord, leave me, for I am a sinful man. I am unworthy to be even in your presence. And we know the story of Paul. Well, Peter was the one. Paul was the one. In second reading to the Corinthians. He says, I'm the unworthy, and yet the Lord chose me. So he calls us. Beyond what we think are our limitations or fears of failure, do not be afraid. The only way we can overcome that fear is when we realize this work is not ours. We are involved in God's work. If we see what we do today as God's work, we have no reason to be afraid. If we think it's ours, you better be scared. If you think you're going to save the world, you better be afraid. If you think you're going to be successful on your own, you better be hiding in your room from fear. If you believe this is all part of God's work, no matter what you are doing, there's no reason to be afraid. I'd like to tell the story of 26 years ago, 27 years ago now, when I was being ordained a deacon, and I may have shared the story before. There were 7 of us being ordained together, diaconate 6 months before priesthood. Down in Chicago, Bishop Timothy Lyon was doing the ordination. And he's standing there before us and he's saying, gentlemen, you're all going to be priests in 6 months. And he began to tell us how difficult priesthood is. He went through this whole list of things. And we're sitting there thinking, we're just out of seminary. We were going to save the world. Who needs Jesus anymore? I mean, we're going to get ordained. We really believe that. We were sitting there, 7 of us. And he went on and looked at you, and gentlemen, you will fail. How encouraging that was in the day of ordination here. You will fail unless you believe God has called you to this. You will fail. We have reason to be afraid unless we believe that this is of God. And the work of God, if we hear this word and share this Eucharist, we have what it takes to transcend our human limitations and there to become who God has called us to be. Holy, holy, holy. God's glory is great.